Welcome back to page 121. Today's going to be the start of a new series based on locations in the Flanus, so locations in the world of Greyhawk. And what better place to start than the city itself, the City of Greyhawk. The idea behind this is going to be different adventuring locations or things that are important to players in general or specifically to my campaign over the years. I just want to take a look at different chunks of the Flanus. And I thought, what better place to start than the City of Greyhawk itself? The city we'll be looking at won't be the one from Gary Gygax's Gord the Rogue novels. It'll be the one out of this fine box set from the late 80s. This was 89? I think it was 89. I'll double check that. So this is the box set. We're going to take a look at the city, and I'm going to do it probably in chunks. We're going to take a look at different districts of the city, the layout, and things like that. So today's going to be some of the background of the city itself and the history, and I'm going to throw in some stuff that maybe appeared in Greyhawk novels or Gygax's Gord the Rogue novels, or some stuff that's peculiar to my own campaign that we've done in the City of Greyhawk. Also, a quick word, subscribers, please. Always want to keep the channel growing, so if you can help out, please subscribe. Subscribers who have already subscribed, thank you. And Patreon, please take a look. If there's anything you can do to help out there, I would appreciate it. Existing patrons, thank you. Back to the important stuff. Today, the City of Greyhawk, beginning a look at the various locations around the Flanus, today on page 121. When I'm running a game and my players are going to the City of Greyhawk for whatever reason, I go ahead and pull this poster map out and I show it to them each time. Now, my players have been playing with me for many, many years, so they're used to it. They've seen this map many times, but it always kind of helps to kind of set the mood a little bit, give an idea of where the players are headed and what they're headed into. I realize this is not necessarily Gary Gygax's Greyhawk, but it is the most complete Greyhawk I have access to, so this is the one that I use. Also, just a quick aside, the box set that I showed in the open is actually available as a PDF or a print on demand through DriveThruRPG. So I'll put a link below to the DriveThruRPG site if you want to pick this up. The other thing I want to acknowledge is, yes, this is second edition. This is not first edition D&D, but I often have mixed first and second edition because, frankly, they were very close to the same system, and the stuff adapts pretty flawlessly to first edition, which is what I still play. So any folks that were wondering, yes, this is a second edition product, but that's never bothered me. So that's it. So now we're going to take a look at a little bit of the city and the history itself. Just 1 second. All right, the Free City of Greyhawk. A little bit of the history of the city. The city itself started out as a trading post for the Great Kingdom far to the east, and it was kind of a stopover point to the furthest reaches of the Great Kingdom, which included what is now Furiandi, then called Ferrand. So Greyhawk was just a trading post with a nice river location, not terribly far from the Near Div off the Selentan River. So why not? Let's go ahead and we'll set up a trading post here, and then eventually the city grew a little bit. In the early Greyhawk information we were able to glean from different early sources in first edition, Greyhawk City itself had experienced some decline. By the time we come along in the roughly 570s, Greyhawk was in decline for a while, but recovering from it. And it was recovering primarily from all the loot that was coming out of Greyhawk Castle, which was where Zagig had his trove, and brave adventurers had gone in and plundered the castle and brought great wealth to the city, and just as importantly, great notoriety. The city experienced a resurgence of visitors, some trying to go to the castle, others just trying to get their hands on some of the money from the castle. So we got a lot of that in the early Greyhawk stuff. Not a ton of that is brought out here in this book. It talks about Greyhawk's growth from a trading center into a very important city. One other quick note is that Zagig Ygraine, however you say his name, was the most influential mayor of Greyhawk, and he had reigned a few hundred years earlier, depending on your source, from the time of the, quote, modern city, unquote. And he's still legendary for some of the innovations he made in the city, the building of Castle Greyhawk itself, and the fact that he was out of his mind and a great mage. He may or may not have built the God Trap beneath Castle Greyhawk. I personally, in my campaign, he did. But you can find some conflicting information on that. You can find conflicting information on almost everything dealing with Greyhawk. But for my purposes, yes, he built the god trap and used that trap to entrap 9 gods, and then used that same power siphoned from those gods to turn himself into a lesser god, a follower of Bokob, god of magic. Bokob the Uncaring. Bokob looked upon his new servant and said, whatever. And it's a joke at our table that Bokob doesn't care. Because Bokob is the Uncaring. He's the god of magic. He just lets magic happen. But Zagig serves him, and there's been a write-up or two of Zagig over the years. I just covered it on, about a year ago on the channel, out of Dragon Magazine, the deities of Greyhawk. So I'll refer you there for anything else on Zagig and Bokob. But back to Greyhawk, Gem of the Flanus. And this is one of the books out of this set. And this gives us the background. Why the Gem of the Flanus? Why not? Greyhawk calls itself that because it is. It's kind of centermost. It's an important industrial hub. It's an important military power. There's lots of stuff to represent Greyhawk, and for Greyhawk to present itself as the Gem of the Flanus. Go back to one quick topic at the beginning. I thought this book was published in 1989. It was. That was a few years after Gary Gygax departed TSR. And TSR kind of wanted their own imprint on Greyhawk at the time, because Greyhawk was still kind of important to them. So we ended up getting this box set, which I've used straight through since I got it in 1989, so over 30 years. Why the Gem of the Flanus? Because it's a learning area. Its climate is not horrible. It suffers midwinter period, 10 to 16 weeks, where the nightly temperatures go below freezing, sometimes plunging 15 to 20 degrees below freezing. Daytime temperatures go above freezing by a little bit during this time, during winter. The winds are generally from the east. They don't really cause much of a problem. It is not uncommon for the city to see heavy snowfall, or it can have some turbulent weather. Basically, Greyhawk on the map is positioned much where Chicago and Lake Geneva, which are relatively close to each other, would be. And a lot of the early TSR stuff has their roots kind of in the Chicago, Lake Geneva area, because that's where everybody who wrote this stuff grew up. But Greyhawk, most importantly, was a trading center. As I said, they were the stop on the way to Ferrand, and they had become important for that when Ferrand broke away from the Great Kingdom. And I'll deal with that when I take a look at Ferrand, which will probably be next in the series, because Ferrand is very important to my campaign. I'll take a look at when Ferrand broke away, but Greyhawk had been an important trading city at that time. They were also an important banking center. They were very influential with banking because they were kind of middlemen. People were able to keep their gold, and basically the banking system is similar to what medieval Europe saw, where you would take a surety note and you'd go from this point to that point. They would use different methods to identify that you were who you were and that the note was not a forgery, and then you could have access to the money that the note gave you. Early banking. We have a lot of scholars say the Medicis were the earliest to do that. I'm not going to debate that here. It's just some interesting real-life history kind of making its way in here. And then we get Greyhawk the Fortress. As the city grew in importance and wealth, it put up walls. And the walls surround the entire city, and there is a section of the old city that's surrounded by the original walls. And that'll come in when I take a look at the districts. Greyhawk the Learning Center. As you have wealth and notoriety, you get a lot of scholars coming to your area. And where there are scholars, there's learning, and there are people who want to learn. So they come to your city, they try to learn, and as they try to learn, they have to spend money to eat and sleep, places to stay, things to buy. They help the city grow. Greyhawk the Religious Center. Yes, there are many, many temples in Greyhawk. In the earliest TSR stuff, there were evil temples sitting next to good temples. That's a throwback to a lot of the Robert E. Howard novels, where some evil deity would have a temple on the main street along with a good deity. TSR moved away from that in the early 80s. Had the evil temples kind of go underground. But in the early stuff, there is some reference to the evil temples right there in the center of the religious area. So we get Greyhawk as religious center, very important to the economy and growth of a city. And Greyhawk the Adventuring Center. As I said earlier, when the Castle Greyhawk itself was reopened by daring explorers. They brought wealth out of it. They brought tales of all the stuff that was still there to be had, and they helped the city kind of wake up a little bit economically and help bring an influx of would-be adventurers to the area as well. The important thing, too, that isn't in one of these but does come out later in the book is that Greyhawk was a center of magic, of not divine magic, but just magic itself, magic users. The Grey College is an established place of learning, has been around for hundreds of years. And even when the city was kind of in decline, that was one of the areas that still kept it very notable, was that you could come here and learn arcane magic and become very skilled in that. And that, of course, would be something that people would come here, try to learn arcane magic, maybe try their luck in Castle Greyhawk. There are also the Cairn Hills to the east of the city itself. Cairn, of course, is a burial site. The Cairn Hills, the burial sites, were able to be looted and lots of treasure found in there. The Aber Owls are right nearby as well. So you have a lot of reasons why Greyhawk was a center of attention and a thriving hub. And then we get the DM's Guide to the City campaign, using stories and NPCs, story ideas, gaming opportunities in Greyhawk City. Give some thought to your players. How are they going to fit into the city? Placing the city in your campaign context. How do the players and the city itself interact? How do they, one, work with the other? Is Greyhawk an important hub, their home, their base, or is it just a place they're going to visit? My campaign has grown for many, many years. I started my Greyhawk campaign in January of 1982, and it's been a consistent campaign straight from there. And in it, we have had some players move to prominence in various places, one of whom is my character, Kirk. I've mentioned Kirk before on the channel. He became, in a very long campaign that started in the early 90s, went through the early 2000s, he became Grandfather of Assassins, because he is an assassin class. He is a Grandfather of Assassins of the City of Greyhawk, and went on for a very long time trying to become mayor and stage a successful election campaign / terror campaign to get himself into the mayor's office, which he is currently holding. So you can have your player characters move into important spots. Now, my character, Kirk, is neutral evil, but I've always played him what I call corporate evil. Kirk knows which side his bread is buttered on, and he knows enough not to tick off the good characters. So whenever he's with any party that has good characters, he has always been neutral at the worst and made himself very useful and very helpful. He's continued to do that in Greyhawk as the mayor, continuing to show himself to be a force for not necessarily good, but a good influence on the city itself. And the city has thrived while he's been mayor. So it's been an interesting dynamic in our campaign, and my character Kirk is almost an NPC these days. As a Grandfather Assassins and things like that, I don't get him to play much anymore. I don't get to play much anymore. I'm an almost total DM. But it was fun having Kirk take over that key office in the City of Greyhawk. And like I say, he's more of an NPC than anything else. But he has had some influence in various adventuring groups that have come into the city. He's hired one or two, things like that. So I use him in that regard mostly. So we got a note about money in your campaign and then starting out your characters. So this is kind of neat. You get some parentage tables, you get childhood contacts, some stuff that D&D was not noted for in 1st and 2nd edition. And then starting and using a story matrix. So this is some storytelling ideas of how you're going to go about your campaign. Again, this was fairly innovative in the late 80s. I realized that a lot of role-playing games now, this is old hat, but it all had to start somewhere, and this is where it started. Then we take a look at the territory surrounding the Free City of Greyhawk, which I'm going to do in its own video, because there are a ton of adventuring places to enjoy around the city. I'll focus on the map itself, and I'll talk about each of the locations there. So really, this is just a quick look at the history and background of the city. A little opening to the book, and I'm going to go through, and I'm not necessarily going to follow the book straight through in order or anything like that. I'm going to move around a little bit, I think. I'm going to keep this pretty free form. If you have this book, I encourage you to go ahead and read up different parts in conjunction with the videos. So, it's a little more fresh in your mind. Or if you're using Greyhawk, hey, great. Again, the PDF is available if you want to grab that. I found this a very fun read, and I use it a lot in my campaign. And I encourage everybody to do the same. But that's all I've got for part 1 of this series, Greyhawk Gem of the Flanus. I haven't thought of a name of this series yet, but I'll put it by the time I post this, I'll come up with a name. So let me know what you think. If you'd be interested in a deeper dive on locations in Greyhawk, and I'll throw in some touches from other sources, such as Gygax's campaign or books, other Greyhawk books, and some stuff that I've done with my campaign universe. If you're interested, please leave me a couple of comments, let me know, and I'm excited to get going on this. So that's all I've got today from page 121. I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for watching. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.